Veronica from Etours, Russia, and we are in St. Petersburg. Today we are going to visit the core of the city, which is the Peter and Paul Fortress. If you want to learn more about St. Petersburg, please subscribe our YouTube channel, follow our social media, and put the notifications on. The heart of fortress is Peter and Paul Cathedral. When thinking of the construction of the fortress and buildings inside, Peter the Great wanted to build something taller or higher than Ivan the Great Bell Tower in Moscow Kremlin. The construction started in the year 1712. The project was supervised by the Swiss master Domenico Trezzini. The Dutch master participated in the construction of the spire. The whole construction started from the bell tower. It was completed in the year 1720. On the top of the spire you will see the figure of angel holding the cross. Every hour the bell in the tower rings. In 1722, Peter the Great decided to proudly show the project to the foreign ministers, forcing them to get into the top of the bell tower. So the construction was 112 meters, which is 32 meters higher than the Ivan the Great Bell Tower in Moscow Kremlin. The construction of the stone cathedral was completed after the death of Peter the Great in 1733. The church inside is very different from traditional Russian churches. The walls are having the depiction which looks like the marble, and inside you will find the iconostasis, which is not classical one. It looks like a triumphal arch or arch of triumph, which would express the victory of the Russian army in the northern war with Sweden. According to the tradition, all of the Russian rulers should be buried in the cathedral. The Moscow Kremlin hosts pretty much a lot of burial places of Russian princes from the very 14th century up to the time of Peter the Great in the Cathedral of Archangel Michael. When Peter the Great moved the capital from Moscow to St. Petersburg, all of the burial places started to be here. To the right from the iconostasis, you will find the oldest burial places within the cathedral. Peter the Great died in the year 1725, and he was temporarily buried in a wooden church while the construction of the stone church was going on. Here is the tomb of Peter the Great, and you will find it easily because it's the only one, almost the only one, decorated with the special medals symbolizing his feats during his reign, as well as you will find the bust of him or sculpture representing his face. In the same row, you will find the burial place of his second wife, who inherited the throne after his reign. And the third one is their daughter, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is known in Russian history as the founder of Moscow State University and Russian Academy of Arts. A bit further, closer to the altar, just behind the burial place of Elizabeth, you will find the burial place of Catherine the Great. She spoke 5 languages fluently. She was in a close friendship with French and European philosophers. She was the first to introduce the project of the Constitution of Russian state, but the project was realized later on. In the same row, you will find the burial place of her husband, Peter III. And niece of Peter the Great is buried just behind me, Anna Ivanovna, or Empress Anne. Close to the altar on the left side, you will find the burial places of Russian Emperor Alexander I, who was supposed to be a winner in the war against Napoleon, the War of 1812. And also you will find the tomb of the son of Catherine the Great, Paul I. Within the graves in the cathedral, you will find some graves which are different from others. These are two graves made of the marble, and these are the burial places of the Russian Emperor Alexander II, who had the nickname the Liberator. In the 19th century, he liberated the peasantry. So he died as a result of assassination, and to commemorate the death of him, there is the church, which is known as the Church on the Spilled Blood. As he died as a martyr as a result of assassination, people decided to bury him in a special place and decorate the grave with the special type of marble, which is different from the other tombs, so you can easily distinguish them. In the same row, you will find the tombs of the Russian Emperor Alexander III, his successor, and the wife of Alexander III. The family of last Emperor Nicholas II, after the revolution, happened to be in Yekaterinburg, imprisoned in the house of Ipatiev. So on the 17th of July in 1918, all of the family members were asked to go to the basement of the house, as if it was very dangerous to stay on the top floor of the house. So there they were all sentenced to death. Only in 1991 the remains of the bodies were found in the city of Yekaterinburg, and the decision was made to bury these bodies here on the southwestern corner of the church in the Catherine's Chapel. So Russian Orthodox Church canonized all of the members of the last royal family, but they still did not recognize them as the real bodies. So sometimes they even say that all of them are pseudo-relics. Three Naves Cathedral includes the pulpit, so it's just next to the altar space on the left side. A staircase made of wooden and decorated with paintings leads us to the special place from where the prayers would be read. It is also decorated with the gilded sculptures of 4 evangelists. Just opposite to this place, there is the place or the seat for the emperor. On the contrary, with the pulpit, it is decorated with the symbols of power of the Russian monarch, such as, for example, if you look on the top, you will find the scepter and orb and the crown topped with a cross. And the symbol of power of Russian Federation now, and it was the symbol of power of Russian Empire, is a double-headed eagle, which came from Byzantine Empire. There are plenty of options how to describe the meaning of the double-headed eagle. Sometimes they say, and this is one of my favorite, that 2 heads means the head of the state. With one head, he would control the inner politics. With other head, he would control the international politics. While visiting the cathedral, take a chance to visit the gallery, which used to be a place for 4 different rooms for royal family. When they were coming to the cathedral, they could rest in these 4 rooms. One of them was a reception room, living room, then ladies' lounge, and a smoking room. In Peter and Paul Fortress, every single day there is a midday shot. That tradition is derived from the times of Peter the Great. At that time, it just marked the beginning of the shift of work or the end of the shift of work, or it would mark the beginning of some flood or fire in the town. So traditions still exist, and we are going to hear the midday shot from the cannon. In this part of the fortress, you can find the flagstaff tower. It is topped with a flag, which is a regular flag for the military navy fortresses around Russia. It was a tradition to raise the flag every day before the revolution of 1917. These days, the tradition is revived. It was revived in the year 2000. And you have a possibility to climb up to see the tower and to walk around the fortress walls to observe the beautiful view on the river. The fortress itself has the same shape as the island. The height of the wall is 12 meters, when the width of the wall is from 5 to 6 meters. Peter the Great loved the idea of the construction of the fortress on this small island because it wouldn't be possible for an enemy to get such a small piece of land and secure the place. It's not that easy to move capital from one place to another, so Peter the Great planned well. And he wanted to construct the fortification system first. And he picked up this place for the construction of the future Peter and Paul fortress. And the place is known as the Hare Island. Yeah, that's right. The island in St. Petersburg is named after this wonderful creature. As locals like to say, the legend says that once Peter the Great came to the construction site with an inspection while scolding the carpenters and engineers for something, a hare jumped into his hands and he decided to pardon the workers and named the island after a bunny or after a hare. That's why you will find these cute statues everywhere in the fortress. Walking in the fortress, you will come across with a very surprising and disputable monument devoted to Peter the Great. It was installed in 1990s here, and it was created by the local master Mikhail Shemyakin. Body proportions, long fingers and small head makes it a bit grotesque. St. Petersburg is believed to be constructed on the water. That's why floods is a frequent phenomena for this town. Here in the fortress, in the Nevsky gates, you will find several plaques or tablets explaining and telling the history of the biggest floods ever happened to St. Petersburg. One of the biggest happened in the year 1824, and the level of water would be up here. We entered the river bank through the gates, which are known as Nevsky. They also have a different name, the gates of the deaf. The thing is that all of the prisoners who were sentenced to death or to the execution would go for their last time through these gates too, and would see the beautiful view on Neva River. Instead of setting a high tax for the European traders, Peter the Great offered them a great deal. Lower tax, and they were supposed to bring more stone to the town. The thing is that St. Petersburg was constructed on the water, and stone was necessary for making the roads cleaner and drier. And the goosebumps come out. On the one hand, for the reason that it's so grandiose. On the other hand, it was once a prison and people could be tortured here. If you want to plan your visit to Peter and Paul Fortress in St. Petersburg, you better do it well in advance, because both international and local tourists would like to learn more about the historical core of the city. These days, Peter and Paul Fortress is a part of the State Historical Museum of St. Petersburg, which is one of the largest museums in Russia. Here comes the time for the sad stories as they are entering the Trubetskoy Bastion prison. When they were arriving to the prison, all of the prisoners were supposed to change their clothes. And here is the collection of the gowns for the prisoners on trial before they were sentenced to something. And opposite, there is the gown or the suit of the sentenced person, and they couldn't escape from this prison. And if they could, there was a special sign over here on their clothes, which was actually a target for shooting. In the 19th century, the prison started to be equipped with a special sound isolation system to prevent any type of communication, even knocking with other prisoners. The main torture in the prison was the constant loneliness and silence. Before the isolation system was installed in the prison, and even after, the prisoners tried to communicate with each other with tapping. There was a special even prisoner's alphabet, so it would consist of the letters of the alphabet and columns and stripes or lines. So first of all, the prisoner would tap the number of the line and then the number of the column. There were two types of cells. One, which you can see right now, was supposed to be a cell for the prisoner who got the sentence or who was sentenced to a labor, for example. Within the most famous prisoners, we can name Maxim Gorky, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Lev Trotsky, the Decembrists, also the brother of Lenin. On the other wing of the prison, there is the separate flat for the supervisor of this prison. And just not to come across with all of the prisoners, the family of the supervisor and supervisor had a special separate entrance and exit. We are in the prison exercise courtyard. The walks were almost alone, accompanied with two guards of the prison. The walks could be from 10 minutes up to 30 minutes, and all the time around this construction, which is actually a bath or Russian banya. It's a regular one. It had 3 rooms: changing room, then washing room, and a steaming room.